Bruce Levine wrote a three-part essay on the political struggle between first-order psychiatry and the rehumanizing resistance in 2016 on the Mad in America website, madinamerica.com. 7 years later, monthly search volume for the term first-order psychiatry is from 0 to 10 searches per month. And Google simply refuses to show any results at all for the term rehumanizing resistance. It just won't look it up. So whatever the battle, there's clearly a need to learn how to communicate. Okay, first question. Who is Bruce Levine? Why should we care? Well, Bruce holds a PhD and is a practicing clinical psychologist. You can tell from his essay topic that he stands in opposition to mainstream psychiatry. And the essay, as I mentioned before at the start, was published on madinamerica.com. And if you've seen some of my other videos, you know I talk about literacy fairly often. And my motto is in the name of the channel, Cranium Ex Rectum. It's meant as a joke. You know what? How about you pull your head out of your arse and face the reality in front of you instead of what you wish were in front of you. So, as much as I agree with Bruce's and Mad in America's positions, I think it's worth taking a look at the literacy of what they're saying and suggesting one or two options for Cranium Ex Rectum. Now, since Bruce published his essay on the MIA website, MIA, Mad in America, let's start with the Mad in America, the MIA mission statement. And I do have a script, okay? So when you see me looking down, I'm making sure that A, I am staying on script, because again, if you have watched other videos of mine, I have a tendency to wander, to go off on tangents. And in a case like this, where I want to make sure that I get something correct, I actually have MIA's mission statement printed in the script, so I will look down right now and read it. Mad in America's mission is to serve as a catalyst for rethinking psychiatric care in the United States and abroad. We believe that the current drug-based paradigm of care has failed our society, and that scientific research, as well as the lived experience of those who have been diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder, calls for profound change. Now, that's somewhere on the screen. I will have put that into a call out so that you can see it for yourself. And there is a link in the description below. The very first section of links is called reference resources, I think. In any case, there's a link. Bruce's essay is in 3 parts. So there's a link to each of Bruce's essays. There's a link to Bruce's website, and the links to his essay will take you to the Mad in America website. And you can find their mission statement if you go up to the menu across the top, under About. I believe it's the very first thing listed under About is Mission. So you can click on that and read the mission statement right on their website. So, let's have a look at it. The first sentence, Mad in America's mission is to serve as a catalyst for rethinking psychiatric care in the United States and abroad. Okay, great. It's a complete sentence, it's a statement. All right. The second sentence, and there are only 2 sentences in the mission statement, which is also good. You want to keep your mission statement as short as possible. But the second sentence is where we start to find some things that are problematic. For example, we believe that the current drug-based paradigm of care has failed our society. Well, okay, they're right. The drug-based paradigm has failed, and it needs to stop being the go-to method for coping with mental illness. But here's the thing, it is far from the only paradigm out there for looking after your mental health. Anyone who wants to teach themselves, which I'm supposing if you're watching this video, you are interested in learning. So if you want to teach yourself, you want to teach your children, you want to learn how to have good mental health. So that means having a strong, positive self-image. It means disciplining your mind to think in a positive direction rather than a negative direction. So if that's something that you want, if you want to have good mental health, then right away I recommend 2 books. The first is by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, and it was originally published in 1960. And the title is Psycho-Cybernetics. Now remember, it was published in 1960. So Psycho-Cybernetics was like a groundbreaking, very edgy title in the middle of the 20th century. Now we see that title and we kind of think, ugh, that sounds weird, okay? But here's the thing. Dr. Maltz's research and that book, plus the other books that he wrote around psycho-cybernetics, all of that is the foundation for every self-help program that is in existence today. Now, granted, some of the self-help programs in existence today have kind of gone off in weird directions, but everything you see, Anthony Robbins, everything he does stems from Dr. Maltz's work. Jack Canfield, everything that he does. John Maxwell, Norman Vincent Peale. All these people have taken Dr. Maxwell's work and they have built upon it. So that's the first one, Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. If you find a book called The New Psycho-Cybernetics, published by or written by Dan Kennedy and Maxwell Maltz, you can get that one too. Okay, because Dan Kennedy, what he did was he took the original text from Psycho-Cybernetics, he kept all of the foundational stuff from Dr. Maltz, and what he did was just update the stories. So that instead of being stories from the 1950s, he updated it to stories from the 1990s, early 2000s. Okay? So either one, Psycho-Cybernetics or The New Psycho-Cybernetics, because it's the same factual information. It's just the stories that have been changed. The other is Jack Canfield's The Success Principles. It's kind of out of my reach, but there's a copy up on my bookshelf. And I can tell you, I am doing a study with Stephanie Oden. We do 1 or 2 chapters every week. And we do the entire book each year. So every year we go back through the book. We reread it, we look at where we are, and how can we apply what's in there in our lives today. Both of these books put forward a paradigm of personal responsibility. And that's the biggest thing about psychiatric care that puts my nerves on edge. The whole thing about psychiatric care is they are giving people a way of saying, well, I'm not responsible for what I do. I have this thing. I'm bipolar, or I am schizophrenic, or I am whatever it is. So they get to take a label and say, that's why I'm a jerk. I'm not a jerk because I choose what I do and I just decide to be a jerk. No, 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 no. I'm a jerk because I have this mental dysfunction. Yeah, no. Cranium Ex Rectum. You're a jerk because you choose to be a jerk. And you are just using this label from a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whoever to say, here's my excuse for being a jerk. And if you think I've gotten off the script, you're right. Because when I start looking straight into the camera and going, instead of looking down to make sure I'm still on script, that's a really good indication that I have left the script. That said, there are lots of paradigms for looking after your mental health that have nothing to do with psychiatry. ESL. No, that's English as a second language. What am I thinking of? NLP, that's what I'm thinking of. Neuro-linguistic programming. Okay. That's a paradigm for understanding how we communicate and making you a better communicator. Psycho-cybernetics, that's another paradigm. The success principles, that's another paradigm. John Maxwell's failing forward, that's another paradigm. There are lots of paradigms that will help you build a strong, positive self-image that have nothing to do with psychiatry. In fact, psychiatry has absolutely nothing to do with building a strong, positive self-image. Psychiatry will keep you looking backward, will keep you looking into your past and trying to find explanations from your past for why you do what you do today. When the truth is, personal responsibility here, the truth is that you do what you do today because you choose to do it. You might say, well, I'm only doing this because they did that. And that's the classic argument between spouses. Well, I only hid the bread because she hid the raisins. Or, I didn't bother washing his shirts because he won't pick up his underwear. No, you didn't wash his shirts because you chose to not wash his shirts. No, you hid the bread because you chose to hide the bread. And then you're just looking for a way to blame it on somebody else. And go back to the description below. The very first link in the description below is a link to the PEP or POOP chart. And look at what you're doing. Is it on the left, where it's a PEP, a personal empowerment practice? Or is it on the right, where it's a POOP, a personal offensive obstructive practice? Yes, I got off the script again. So, there are lots of paradigms that look after your mental health that have nothing to do with psychiatry. But here's the thing. To become a psychiatrist, you have to be a doctor first. Okay, you have to go to university, get a degree, then go to medical school, get a medical degree, become a doctor, and then, just like neurosurgery or podiatry, any of the specializations in medicine, psychiatry is one specialization. And so we have an inclination to think that because doctors, understand physical health, and when we talk to them about whether it's having a cold, or our daughter just got chicken pox, or I have pain in my hips, or whatever it is, because we talk to them about physical stuff, and for the most part, they know what's going on in the body. They don't know 100%. Just for the most part, they know what's going on. So we are inclined to think that, well, if they study psychiatry, then they must know what's going on in the brain. That's a really big mistake. So I'll give you an example. When doctors know a thing, they say they know. So if you do a Google search for what does the appendix do, what you're going to see is information that says, we think the appendix does this. We think the appendix introduces the body to other bad stuff, antigens. I think that's the right word. I didn't write it down. And introduces them to the rest of the body. So it helps with the immune system. But all the literature says we think that's what it does. That means they don't know. They have evidence that points in that direction, but they don't know for sure. And when it comes to the brain, no one knows just how the brain works. They can point to things, the pituitary gland, the medulla oblongata, various pieces within the brain, and that's another thing. We have this inclination to think that the brain is one organ. But the brain is more like the digestive system. So the digestive system starts in your mouth, because your mouth is full of acid. And you chew, you break down the food, the acid starts to break it down, then you swallow, so your throat is part of your digestive system, then the stomach, then the intestines, the large intestine, the small intestine, the colon, and then the rectum. And then the last piece out is the anus. And in the liquid direction, I don't know. I can name some of the parts, like the kidney and the urethra. The rest I kind of don't know. Your brain is more like that. Okay, as opposed to the heart. So the heart has the left and right ventricle and the left and right aorta. It has parts, but the heart is all one thing. The brain is not all one thing. There's several other organs in there. Okay, and some of the organs are glands. Not sure why. So the kidney is an organ, the liver is an organ, the heart is an organ. But the pituitary is a gland. Not sure why it's not the pituitary organ. I've never looked that up. Anyway, again, I'm off script. Here's the thing about mental illness, okay? There is no test. There's no blood test, there's no x-ray, there's no MRI. There is no test that you can do that will objectively come back and say, this is the illness. Now with cancer, and there are several different kinds of cancer, they can test and tell you which kind of cancer you have. If you have the flu, whether it's the COVID variant or some other variant, if you have influenza, they can do a blood test and tell you this is the flu that you have. In the same way they do a blood test to measure how much sugar is in your body and how well your body is dealing with it, to measure how much cholesterol, HDL and LDL is in your body and how your body is dealing with it. But there is no test to demonstrate the existence of mental illness. And so you will find a lot of doctors who say, okay, mental illness doesn't exist. They will absolutely agree that people behave oddly. So someone who is experiencing schizophrenia, and they are behaving oddly. Okay. But they are choosing that behavior. The key to helping them is finding out why are they choosing that behavior, and then help them deal with it. There's an organization, I believe now it's an international organization, but it started, I think, either in Scotland or in Ireland, and it's called Working with Voices. And it is an organization that is specifically supportive of people with schizophrenia. And they encourage people to accept, yes, you are hearing voices. So listen to them. Hear what they're saying. And then, with the help of people supporting you, objectively assess whether what the voice is telling you is true or not true. The thing is, it is you and me, it is us as individuals who determine whether we are experiencing mental illness. Now, it could be as simple as having a bad day. Yeah, you are irritable, you're tired, yeah, you just, leave me alone. It's a bad day. Okay, that's a very mild mental illness. Lasts a few hours, maybe it lasts the whole day. Depression. You know, your mom or dad dies, your brother or sister dies, your dog dies, your cat dies. You can experience depression. Now, it's something that you are choosing because you're focused on the negative experience of this person has just died. And now I don't have them in my life anymore, and I miss them. And so you're focusing on negative things, which brings you down, which depresses you. That might last a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. In really severe cases, it could last a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years. In every case, this is a behavior that we are choosing. We are depressing ourselves because we're focusing on negative things. The only thing a psychiatrist brings to the discussion is the ability to put a label on it. To say, well, you are clinically depressed, or you are bipolar, or you have dissociative personality disorder, or whatever. If you look at the DSM-5, and they're now up to the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, DSM, if you look at it, it's a huge, thick binder, just filled with all the ways in which a psychiatrist can say, this is how you're screwed up. It's filled with labels. That's all it is. It's a book of billing codes. So a psychiatrist, flips through it and has a lot of it in his head and says, here's what's wrong with you. There's a number associated with that. That's their billing code. Which is also why you might find some things no longer get diagnosed. You know what? That's going to take me off into a whole completely other direction. If you have questions, by all means, put them in the comments below, and I will find time to make another video and answer your questions. So back to the script. So we did the part about the drug-based paradigm is failing society. Then there's the bit that says, those who have been diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder. Because keep in mind, psychiatrists do not diagnose disease. That's for actual medicine. All psychiatrists diagnose is disorders. Think about that. In any case, that statement, those who have been diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder. Okay, this is an explicit admission. Explicit. There are explicit admissions, which means a direct, open admission, and there are implicit admissions. So, not direct, not open, but yeah, you've admitted to it. So it's an explicit admission that psychiatry is able to diagnose your mental health issue. But remember, I made the point, there is no diagnostic test. There's no blood test, there's no imaging test, there's nothing. to show that mental illness even exists, which is why they're called disorders rather than diseases. They are unable to show pathology. And again, the reason they are unable to show pathology is the reason we get into a mental illness is because of the thoughts we choose to entertain. If you consistently choose to entertain thoughts that people are out to get you, then you are going to believe people are out to get you. You are persuading yourself that people are out to get you. And so you will behave as though that's true. In the same way, if you believe that the world is there to support you and that you will find the help you need, you will, the resources you need will come to you, then that's what will happen. It's all about how we choose to behave. It is all about personal responsibility. So do you see the problem when, they say those who have been diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder, do you see the problem where there are no diagnostic tools? There's no imaging, there's no blood tests, there's nothing. But we say, or they say, that you have been diagnosed with a psychiatric. No, you haven't. You've been assessed to be exhibiting certain behaviors, but there is no diagnosis. Diagnoses go with diseases. It's just that psychiatry has co-opted a lot of medical language, which is natural. Psychiatrists are doctors. They're trained to diagnose things. So when they go into psychiatry, they continue to believe that they're diagnosing something, despite the fact that there are no diagnostic tests. Starting to feel like I'm beating a horse here. That statement, by the way, is also directly contradictory to Bruce's point in his essay that psychiatry never comes close to being a legitimate authority for determining much of anything related to mental health. Okay? Because, again, I don't know how many times I've said it already. I'll try to make this the last one. There is no diagnostic test. All they can do is listen to what you say, assess behavior that you are showing or exhibiting, and make an assessment and say, this is what you seem to be doing. Now, before I go much further, let me remind you, because it is going to be really easy for you to think that I am trying to beat up on Matt in America, or I am trying to beat up on Bruce. No, I am not. What I am trying to do is show, these are people with really good intentions and really good educations. Bruce has a PhD. He's clearly well educated. And I agree with Bruce's basic position. And I agree with the work being done by Matt in America. I have no desire at all to tear them down. My purpose is just this, showing that people with good intentions, with good educations, can have difficulty with language and the message they want to communicate. Now, I've said this in other videos, and keep this in mind. When I graduated high school in the mid-1980s, back then, in the 1980s, the statistic was that almost 50% of university graduates were functionally illiterate. In the mid-1980s. This is being filmed in 2023. Do you suppose literacy rates have gone up? No. They certainly have not. Test standards have gone down. And if test standards have gone down, so has literacy. And that's the point that I'm after. Is you need to really read stuff and you need to think. I know, it's like a nasty four-letter word, think. The truth is we all need a dose of Cranium Ex Rectum when it comes to literacy. We are all very lazy about it. And this is nothing to say of more specialized knowledge, such as marketing literacy. You know, when I spoke earlier about the fact that first order psychiatry only gets 0 to 10 searches a month, according to Google, and rehumanizing resistance, Google won't even show results for. It refuses to even look for that. That's like a huge wow. Okay, that's right up there with, you know, the whole idea that it's okay for Dave Chappelle to be up on stage and talking about this, that, and the other thing, and saying that he calls his children nigga. But let a white guy do that, you know? And the world just goes nuts. What? A white guy said it? If you're going to use the word, you had best be prepared for everyone to use the word. And if you are unprepared for everyone to use the word, then stop using it. Sort of like, actually exactly like, if you have zero desire for your children to swear or tell lies, then you had best avoid swearing, and you had best be honest. Because children live what they learn. Let's jump back to MIA's mission statement for a second. I want to look at the last 4 words. Calls for profound change. Those are the last words in their statement. And it maybe will read better or sound better if I put the whole phrase together. So there's a conditional clause in there. I'll pull that out. And so the whole thing says, and scientific research calls for profound change. I'm going to start by supposing that you have read Bruce's essay. That's going to be really useful, because I have zero intention of reading it to you. So you kind of need to read it and be familiar with what's in there. Won't take you very long. It's a pretty easy thing to read. There are 3 of them. Each one might take you 5 minutes to read. It's good content, and reading the whole thing might give you fuel for questions to ask. And you're free to... When you're watching one of these videos, you are likely to have questions related to the content that's in the video itself. That's fine. That's kind of why I'm doing the videos, right? But in a situation like this, you read Bruce's essay, it might stimulate questions that are unrelated to stuff that I've covered in this video. And it's perfectly okay for you to come back to this video and put your question in the comments. That's okay. You know, you can help me a little bit by saying, listen, this isn't directly related to the video, but I read Bruce's essay and I have this question. Okay, that would help me out, just so that I understand what's going on. Where was I? Oh, that's all about answering questions. I did that part. You know, I go off script a lot, but sometimes I get a little confused because I stay, even though I'm not looking, I stay on script, and I end up getting half a page ahead of where I was. And then I'm like, where am I? Having read Bruce's essay, what do you think? Okay, and I'm gonna read this because I wrote this for a reason. I thought about what I wanted to say. Is he advocating profound change? Profound change. If you have to, go look up what profound means. Or is he simply sharing advice on how to change tactics in a battle that has been dragging on for several decades? See, this is part of literacy. Literacy allows you to look at what someone is saying, in this case, what someone has written, and assess it. On the one hand, Mad in America says their mission, you know, that the scientific research calls for profound change. Okay, great. Well, does this essay advocate profound change? Or is this essay just advice about how to make some changes in a battle that has been ongoing since kind of maybe the 1970s? And that should lead you to question, what about Mad in America's position? You know, they say that scientific research calls for profound change. Okay. But when you read through their material, they are really only talking about research that relates to drugs and their efficacy. How well they work, how well actually they don't work. There is nothing on the Mad in America site from people such as James Allen, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Jack Canfield, Napoleon Hill, or, as far as I've found so far, anyone else who advocates for mental and emotional strength through personal responsibility and choice. Now, here's where you need to, because this is what makes it easy for you to think, well, Conrad's just beating up on the people. No. I know it will sound that way. But here's the thing. I know at least a little bit of the answer to why it is that they are focused where they are focused. And so far as I can tell, Mad in America is against three things. Involuntary commitment, which is a thing, by the way. You can be arrested, put in jail. That means you can be admitted to a psychiatric ward where you are not allowed to leave for 72 hours. And depending on how you behave during those 72 hours, they can extend it. And it can end up being extended for the rest of your life. So they are against involuntary commitment, which kind of ties into the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, since Mad in America is an American United States organization. Forced treatment, because once you are involuntarily committed, a psychiatrist can force treatment upon you. Whether that's electroconvulsive therapy, which is exactly what it sounds like. They electrocute you. They pass electricity through your brain. They can force you to take medication. They can force treatment upon you. And the third thing, the uninformed use of psychiatric drugs. That's a really important part of the phrase, the uninformed use of psychiatric drugs. And when you read through material on Mad in America, it's easy to get the idea that they're just against psychiatric drugs. Not quite. They recognize that for some people, in some circumstances, some of the psychiatric drugs can be useful. They can be beneficial. And so it's very much, again, a personal responsibility. You have to assess your situation, and you need to choose for yourself whether using a particular drug is the right thing to do. Well, the only way you can do that is to have a well-informed choice. So the psychiatrist, the doctor, has to give you information about, here's what this drug will do. Here's what it will not do. And here are side effects. And here is how you watch for those side effects. Let me illustrate this with a story from my own experience in the medical field. Okay, so as opposed to psychiatry, in medicine. When I was in my late 20s, I experienced pericarditis. That's an inflammation of the sac around the heart. Very painful. You can look it up. Just Google it. Pericarditis. Pericarditis. P-E-R-I. Carditis. And the prescription for pericarditis is a medication called prednisone. It's an extremely powerful anti-inflammatory. It's a corticosteroid. Extremely powerful. The problem with that is Prednisone dissolves your bones. Literally. It causes your bones to dissolve. So you can imagine, I am 28 when I'm diagnosed, 29 by the time I stopped taking prednisone, and the heart specialist was kind of, wow, we need to get you off this medication. You know, it's one thing to somebody who is in their 70s or their 80s to give them this medication because they're close to dying anyway, and that was actually said to me. But for you, in your 20s, this medication will kill you. So, okay, yeah, perhaps I need to get off it. But some psychiatric drugs are like that. Okay, you start out with a physically healthy brain. Your brain is healthy. But after a few months of taking psychiatric drugs, you wind up with physical damage to your brain. Now, and keep in mind, the medical profession actually has a pretty bad history with prescribing nasty medications. Heroin was once upon a time a prescribed medication. Opium in the form of laudanum. And you see laudanum in old Western movies. That was prescribed. Whiskey used to be a prescribed medication. Cigarettes. Doctors, King George the Sixth? If you've ever seen the film The King's Speech, I'm not sure King George what. It's either King George the Fifth or King George the Sixth. Basically, Queen Elizabeth's dad. And he took over because his brother abdicated the throne, and he was king during World War II. A massive, motivating, unifying power to the British people. And he was actually prescribed cigarettes because he stuttered. And they said cigarette smoking will calm the nerves and help you speak more fluidly. No, not at all. But doctors were prescribing cigarettes for things. Okay, yes, I'm off script again, yet again. So you start taking a psychiatric drug, you have a healthy brain, and a few months down the line, your brain will start showing physical damage. Now that's in addition to the fact that pretty much every psychiatric drug is addictive. And the level and rate of addiction is so bad that I think around 2009, 2010, psychiatry actually relabeled addiction. And when you come off of a drug, you no longer get the DTs, you're no longer detoxifying. What you do is you experience withdrawal syndrome. So they redefined addiction basically to avoid responsibility and avoid lawsuits from people getting addicted to the drugs that are prescribed. About involuntary commitment and forced treatment. If you live in any country where psychiatry is practiced, almost every country in the world, in fact, I don't know of any where it is not practiced, you can be involuntarily committed for up to 72 hours. I mentioned that earlier. And depending on how you behave, that commitment can be extended. And while you are committed, they can force treatment upon you. That's just bizarre. You have done nothing wrong other than behave oddly. And they can force you to take drugs. They can force you to receive electroconvulsive therapy. They could put you into insulin coma. It's a discredited practice, but if that's what the psychiatrist believes will work for you, they can do that. Might kill you, but they can do that. So it would be reasonable to suppose that Mad in America is in favor of anything that helps people build a strong self-image, to help them connect through healthy relationships and find ways to be effective, right? Absolutely. And that would be a profound change. You take away a lot of psychiatry's power by showing people how to live a happy, fulfilling life without turning to psychiatrists in the first place, without going to psychologists or therapists or whatever else. Now, there are still some legal changes that need to happen around, involuntary commitment and forced treatment. But psychiatry loses its power if no one is turning to them for answers. And like I said, so far I've yet to see any content along those lines on the Mad in America site. But Mad in America is legitimately focused on removing psychiatry's power to commit people involuntarily and to force treatment upon them. These are good things to change. These are things that do need to change. And that would be a profound change if Canadian Parliament or US Congress or British Parliament, if they passed law that says, okay, no more involuntary commitments. You are not allowed to arrest somebody and put them in jail because they say, I think I'm going to rob that store. You have to wait until they actually do it. You have to wait until after they commit a crime to arrest somebody and put them in jail. So if somebody says, I see something that isn't there, or I think I want to commit suicide, okay, we agree that is someone who needs help. But you are not allowed to arrest them and incarcerate them in a psychiatric ward and force treatment upon them. No, they haven't done anything wrong. So that would be a profound change, to take away that power to involuntarily commit people and force treatment upon them. And you see, here's what I'm driving at, and I think it has been really unclear so far. I am just beginning to learn about Mad in America, and I am just beginning to write articles for Mad in America. And what I've been talking about, building a strong, positive self-image, using material from people like Jack Canfield and James Allen and John Maxwell, these are things that I do. Robert Whitaker, the guy who founded Mad in America, is an investigative journalist. And he just wrote, I forget the title. So the book before his most recent one was Anatomy of an Epidemic. And it's about the mass turning towards psychiatry, looking for labels, looking for ways of excusing our behavior. His most recent book is about the institutional corruption around lobbying and paying researchers and drug companies who do research and then bury any negative research results. Okay, so they make it impossible for you to have an informed choice because they fail to provide all the information they have about the drugs that they're putting out there on the market. Okay, so I see this kind of content as missing from Mad in America, but it's missing because there's no one within the Mad in America community who has the inclination or the knowledge or the experience, or I could use all kinds of descriptors. There's just no one who has been writing the kind of material that I'm talking about. And Bruce, he's writing about the political struggle between psychiatry and people who want to live without the harmful effects of psychiatry. Let's wrap this up by looking at why I started this episode. We want to abolish the power of psychiatry to involuntarily commit people to force treatment upon them. We want to completely reverse what is currently being done around the information that is provided to patients, all the way from drug companies burying information through to psychiatrists thinking, well, this person isn't capable of understanding all the nuances of what's going on, so I just won't bother telling them. I'll just tell them, here, take this drug at this dose. And, we'll check in a week or 2 weeks, and if there are any negative effects, we'll just adjust the level of medication. Okay, that is the complete opposite of an informed choice. That's just a dictator giving orders. So if you have been paying attention, you probably recognize that in this whole episode, there are at least two battlefronts in this disagreement. There's the legal battle, the involuntary commitment, the forced treatment, the hiding of research results by drug companies. Then there's the social battle, showing people how to live without relying on psychiatry and its poppycock advice. So the legal battle really kind of isn't even with psychiatry. The legal battle is making the case in the courts and before political bodies like Parliament or Congress, the Senate, those organizations, and getting them to recognize the laws need to be adjusted. They need to be changed. The social battle is things like this, me trying to convince you that what we call mental illness is someone choosing to behave in a particular way that is definitely odd, can certainly be socially unacceptable. But there are other issues. Things like drug choice, informed consent, societal stigma. One of the things that gives psychiatry power is somebody starts behaving in an odd way, and we say, oh, you're behaving in an odd way. You're behaving the wrong way. And we fail to stop and think, wait a second, this person is making a choice to behave this way. What is it that's stimulating that choice? So I'll use an example that's near and dear to me. Suicide. A teenager becomes so disconnected, believes themselves so ineffective, that they begin to believe that suicide is an option. Where does that come from? Where does the belief that they are disconnected from everything, where does the belief that they are ineffective about everything come from? Remember, children learn and then they live what they learn. And from whom do children learn? The very people that are now pointing at them and saying, you're wrong to think about suicide, you're wrong to do blah, 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 which only serves to make them feel more disconnected, to make them feel more ineffective, and to push them further down the path of contemplating suicide. There's one to think about, isn't it? There's a cranium ex rectum. If someone in your family is thinking about suicide, you should be thinking, what have I done to cause them to feel disconnected and ineffective? And more importantly, what can I do to help them feel connected and effective? At a minimum, you can join the effort by asking questions and leaving your comments below. That's a good place to start.